In the About section, there is an entire subsection here on contributing to the design system. And we've tried to make it, break it out into digestible chunks of information, but it talks about how to suggest an addition or update or a change or removal. And another thing I just wanted to point out here, since we're on the About page, is there's a section for designers here, and each section will talk about like how to get started with the design system, and a brief overview of our libraries, design libraries, because there are more than one. And also it'll talk about Sketch for Teams at the VA. So let me just give you kind of a tour here, since we're on design.va.gov. One of the first things you'll want to do is to get access to Sketch for Teams. So Sketch for Teams is essentially the cloud-based solution that Sketch offers. It's basically the desktop app, but there's like a web, like a limited web app experience where you can store your files and share them, and share them with your the developers on your team too. They can view the files and inspect and see the colors and other CSS properties. So in order to get started with Sketch for Teams, you'll want to go into the design channel in Slack. I think is the best place to post, and you can tag Kevin Hoffman and request to be added for Sketch for Teams, and then you'll receive an invitation and accept, and you should be in. And I'll show you Sketch for Teams here in a minute, but I just wanted to go over the design.va.gov quickly. So about a lot of good stuff, how to contribute, how to get started as a designer. There's also, if you want to go back and look at our design principles, they're here. And there's also some really good information on a maturity scale we use. As we get into the components, you'll see how they're tagged with these, color-coded items. And you can click any of those tags within a component page, and it'll take you to this definition list here. But essentially, most of our components are in the green use category. We have some use with caution, which usually means those are new, and they may have some research associated with them, but they may not be widely used across va.gov yet. So that's why we have that caveat of use with caution. And again, it kind of breaks down between the use and use with caution as well. Like especially if something's just been proposed, like again, this might have a use with caution tag to it. If something is deployed and widely used, it's tried and true, that'll be a use best practice. And under don't use, I think right now mostly the don't use we have are components that have been deprecated and patterns that have been deprecated. And a lot of times things will get deprecated because accessibility is not what it should be. Accessibility standards always are evolving, so we try to keep up with them. Anyway, you can come back and revisit this maturity scale. I think it has a lot of good information. Let's see. I'm going to skip over to content. So content style guide. Again, this is, the principles of plain language, our standards for numbers, abbreviations, things like that. This is, just a great section of design.va.gov to read over, or at least scan, to get yourself familiar with the principles of plain language, especially. And it's under content principles. There's a section on plain language. Yeah, so and then here there's a top 10. So this is really useful. And I also find this error messages part of the content style guide really useful. So you could kind of dig into each category and see, but there's a table with, it talks about like the use case and then the message title and the content and also the component you would want to use if you're trying to address a particular use case. And these feedback messages, I think, are also really useful, especially when you're dealing with forms. And yeah, again, there's a section on form labels as well. It's big, so you could dig around in it. The foundation section is, you know, as the word describes, the foundational elements of the design system. These are also elements that are traditionally associated with style guides. So our breakpoints, this is useful mostly, I think, for developers, but our color palette is here. And we've recently updated the sketch for the primary design system sketch library with to make sure the colors match what is on design.va.gov. There was a few inconsistencies, but these should all be aligned now. And yeah, icons, the layout, this is where our grid is. So if you have questions about how to align columns on your page, this would be a good page to look at. The layout. Oh yeah, right here, page layouts. Yeah. So just some good examples here. Typography. You know, it lists our heading sizes and body text, things like that. And utilities, this is a lot of stuff that developers will look at around CSS specs mostly, but of course you're welcome to peruse them if you want to get familiar with the different tokens the design system uses. See if there's anything else. Yeah. Now, this is what I consider really the meat of the design system, the components and the patterns. And we also have templates, and there's an overview that explains the difference here. But so if you looked in the left-hand side here, let's make it bigger. You can see at the high level here, the color-coded maturity tag that I was showing you earlier. So if we go into accordion, it aligns with this tag, use best practice. And again, you can click on this and go back to that maturity scale definitions list. At the top here, it'll also have a tag if there's translations available in the coded component. And again, you can see this is use best practice because accordions have been widely used all over va.gov. And so we feel confident about this component. Here in the resources section, you can, if there are any open issues related to accordions, you could click and open GitHub. You'll need to, you know, have the GitHub account too, and to be added to the correct repo if you are already. And then if we have research that has accordions tagged in it, maybe they weren't specifically, you know, wasn't specifically research on accordions, but perhaps there was accordions in the user interaction. So you might see research associated with a component. If you click here, and after you're added to Sketch for Teams, you'll be able to open this link in a new window. It might actually be viewable as a public link too. I'm not 100% sure, but all of the components should have links to the sketch assets. So this is, I'm just in read-only mode here, but you can see an example of the design assets. And then most of the components the pages are organized according to examples, usage. Some of them have a code usage section, content considerations, accessibility considerations, and some might have a related section which just cross links to a related component or pattern. And then there's a checklist at the bottom that basically indicates, it's another indicator of how mature the component is and our documentation to you. So something I wanted to point out quickly here is that you can see these embedded examples within the component pages, and they link to Storybook, which is where you can go into the coded component examples and play around with the different sizes, essentially. And that could be really helpful to look at the way, a component renders in the mobile viewport. So I clicked and opened Storybook in a new page. And if you see this Canvas tab here in the upper left, if you click on it, you'll go to another view where you can select the screen size. So this helps give you an idea of what this might look like in a mobile viewport or a tablet, for example. So that's kind of cool. And there's additional documentation. Again, this would be something that's relevant a lot of times to developers, but you could also, go in and just read more about the component here in Storybook. And also another thing is that a lot of times there are more examples in Storybook than there are on the component pages, because we just have a lot of different variations, especially with form components, and it would just make these pages massive. So I really recommend going in to take a look at Storybook as well, to familiarize yourself with the components. And let's see, patterns. So patterns are pretty exciting, I think, because last year, well, at least in the last quarter, we updated and added 8 new patterns. And patterns are, I guess, if thinking about atomic design, this would be another step, like a higher level up. So components are more at the micro interaction level, whereas templates, which we can get to, will make up groupings of components, on a page layout. It's more like a static experience. And patterns can span multiple screens and in the flow. So what we've done here is break the categories out into ask users for or help users to. And this is something that the gov.uk design system does, and other design systems are picking up on this, rather than, just sorting patterns by how to organize data. We really want to think from a user-centered point of view. So we're listing it out by the use case. So a lot of these, well, at the top here, address like form patterns. So again, like contact preferences, sometimes these aren't too fancy, but just an example of how you might want to, or how you should show how to capture contact preferences if that's a feature you're putting in your product or form. This one on how to ask for gender was updated recently. And so, yeah, we're propagating this across a lot of the government, onto the US system as well. We're sharing this pattern with them. Let's see, help users to. This is an example of which one was this? Collecting, I think, oh yeah, keeping a record of their information after it's submitted. So just an example of when you submit a form, how the user can print the page and save that for their records, and also the print styling. So some neat stuff here in patterns. It's pretty meaty, I think. And templates, there's not a lot now, but we are adding them, especially in forms. So these are, again, just standard page layouts. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You know, when you're putting a new form on va.gov, this is a great place to look to see, okay, here's how I structure my introduction page, or that's actually how to apply. And here's the introduction page. And there's also confirmation. We're working on a review page example as well. So yeah, I know that's a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff here. And there's also a search box. So if you want to search rather than browse, you can do that on design.va.gov.